the OklaRoots YouTube channel. In today's tutorial, I figured, you know what, it's January. I live in Northeast Florida. It even gets a little chilly here. It's kind of a dark day. Let's do something just fun and quick and cute. Let's make a cute little pouch, maybe with a cup of tea. So today we're going to be making the clear planner pouch, and this comes from Sewn Ideas. You guys know how much I love Sewn Ideas over here. I especially love going to Sewn Ideas when I want something that's going to just come together pretty quickly and it's going to be super useful and super adorable, and this pouch is that. And I know we've got some reflection on here. Let me walk you through this pouch. It's a pretty decent sized pouch. I mean, you can see it's not a super small pouch. This pouch has 3 zippers. It has one zipper on the front, and that zipper, it's for the clear pocket on the front, which I love. So you can have a lot of fun here, either with your vinyl or with the fabric that's going to go behind the vinyl. And then on the back, we have another identical clear pocket. And then on the top, we have the main compartment, which does have a lining in it. So this pouch, it's so quick. It comes together so fast. I wouldn't say it's like scrappy friendly, because you do need some bigger cuts because it's not a super tiny pouch. However, I think this is like the perfect craft room accessory. Obviously, travel. Everything is good for travel. You can put so much stuff in here. But for me personally, I was looking like, this is my notebook that I use to keep all my notes for the videos. I can fit this in the top just like that. Here are some cute Okla rulers, so I can fit those in my little pocket over here so I can see them. Isn't that cute? And then I can put some markers, some pens. This would be great for kids. This would be great for crafters, for artists, for everybody. I mean, it's just a really great pouch. And here's the thing. I love making big bags. I love making little bags. I love making all the bags. But what I use more than anything in my house are pouches. That's how I keep all of the stuff organized, right? I have pouches for everything. I'll use my Cricut to cut out like some adhesive vinyl and like stick like labels on stuff. I'm a huge fan of pouches, especially when we have like a clear pocket to go with it. So because this is called a planner pouch, Vivi over at Sewn Ideas actually included a bunch of printables for you. So these are just little calendar printables. So you can see that it has one for every month, and you can write the numbers in it, and then you have like your to-do list for that month. And what the intention is that you take that, let's see what we have on this side, and you slide that into the clear pocket, and that way you can kind of see, okay, this is what my to-do is. Like I said, you could keep your binder, you could keep your notebook, your pens, you could keep projects in here. If you're working on a very specific project, you can kind of like write all the details for that on your piece of paper, keep all the bits inside. A bunch of project bags, that's actually a really cool idea. I like that idea a lot. I think I might have to use that. So you can see in this first version, I did use vinyl, a lot of vinyl. I used clear vinyl, I used vinyl for the exterior, I used cool cotton for the lining behind the clear vinyl, and then I used cool cotton for the lining inside of the bag as well. I love it. I made sure to use a thinner vinyl because like these corners down here, you can see they're not totally ideal. I mean, maybe if I kind of blasted it with a hairdryer, I could push out those corners a little bit more. So in today's tutorial, just to make it a little bit easier, I'm going to be using cool cotton for the exterior. I'm not going to use any vinyl at all, but I will be using waterproof canvas for the lining, and that's going to help add a little bit of extra structure to the bag. So if you're new to the OklaRoots YouTube channel, please consider clicking subscribe down below. If at any point you like this video, please give it a like. Any questions, comments, shoutouts, anything at all you want to say, leave them down in the comment section. I will have timestamps for every single step of this tutorial. There's not a whole lot of steps. It's not a terribly time-consuming bag, but I will have steps for all of them down below. I made one tweak to the bag. I just tweaked the top zipper. If you've been around for a while, you know that I am a fan of a zipper tab on the top instead of having the zipper. Even with the fabric, zipper ends go into the edge. I don't like that. So with a zipper tab, you do have a little opening on the side, but I like that. So I'm gonna be showing you how I do that and the adjustments I make to accommodate that. All right, guys, let's get started. So for the outer fabric, you're gonna need 2 fat quarters. Now, you can get very scrappy with this. There's a lot of options here. For the back of the vinyl pocket, I'll be using this cool cotton here, but then for the rest of the exterior, I'll be using this fun little print over here. You could actually make a really cool quilt block and use that as the back of your clear pocket. I think that would actually look really cool because it would kind of protect it. So there's a lot of options here. I'll be using this clear vinyl right here. You need about 16 inches by 14 inches of the clear vinyl. Since my clear vinyl has this fun print on it, I wanted to make sure that the material it goes over isn't too busy. Because if I have a really fun print on the material that goes behind that clear vinyl, it's going to kind of be too busy and you won't see any of it. So I am using kind of a more basic muted fabric for that. And then for the lining, again, you're gonna need 2 fat quarters, or you could get like a yard of fabric. I'm gonna be using waterproof canvas today because that means I don't have to interface it, which I'm a fan of skipping that step. Speaking of interfacing, you're gonna need about a yard of woven interfacing. I'm using Sew today. You could also use Pellon SF101. You're gonna use this on pretty much anything that's quill cotton. There's a couple pieces that you're not gonna use this on if it's quill cotton, but pretty much if there's quill cotton, you're gonna be using this. Since I'm not using any sort of quill cotton lining, I actually use less than a yard of this. And then for a little bit of structure, you're gonna have fusible fleece. Now, you don't have to use fusible fleece. If you're using like a vinyl exterior, you don't need to use fusible fleece at all. If you want, you can use Decoville Light. You can use Sew Plus, which is like Sew but just like a little bit beefier. There's a lot of options here. So if you don't like working with fusible fleece, you definitely do not have to work with it today. It does make the bag a little bit more cushiony, but if that's not the look you're going for, you can just skip it and use some sort of a little bit firmer piece like a Decoville Light. Like I said, we're not gonna be sewing it into the seams, so you can get away with other things if you're using a more domestic machine today. Okay, so here's most of the other stuff we're gonna be using. Obviously, lots of clips. We're gonna have 3 zippers today, so you want these to be 15 inches or longer. I will be cutting one of them down shorter than the others, so we'll talk about that in a little bit. 3 zipper pulls to go with it. If you wanna add a little keyring on the side, you can. It's totally optional. Doing this will bulk up that seam, so if you just don't wanna go through that many layers, you don't really need to add this, but I will show you how to do it. I have my bag tag. A small ruler is always helpful. My needle today is a Schmetz Microtex 8012. For the bobbin thread, I'll be using a Gutermann thread just from Joann's. For the top thread, I'm using a Tex 35 weight. I always have a lighter on hand to help clean up messy threads. I'll show you that. And then for marking on my fabric, I have a chalk marker and also an air erasing marker. All right, let's start with the outer fabric first. You're going to have 2 cuts of your outer fabric for the top of the exterior. Both of these cuts have woven interfacing already applied and a strip of fusible fleece. You can see the fusible fleece cuts are smaller than the fabric cuts because we don't really want these to be in the seam. So I already have both of these fused. Next, you have the outer top of your vinyl pocket. Now, these are 2 cuts of material, and pretty much we're just going to double fold this and add it on like binding to the top of the clear vinyl pocket. So because we don't want any extra bulk, this is not interfaced with anything. This is just the pieces of quill cotton. And then we have the outer bottom. This is just the bottom of the bag. You're gonna have 4 cuts of these, and all 4 of these are interfaced with the woven interfacing. Then optional, you have a key ring strap. This is just 1 small cut of fabric. I do interface this with woven interfacing. And then you're gonna have your zipper tab cuts. These are quill cotton. They have no interfacing on them. I have an extra zipper tab cut here. This one is 2 inches by 4 inches, and I'm gonna show you how we use that for the top zipper to avoid having any of the fabric from the zipper in the seam in the end. And then finally, we have our clear vinyl pocket. So this is not super clear. This is a clear vinyl with a print on it. These are really fun to play with. There's so many options out there. So I'm gonna be using one of these today. And so I have 2 cuts of that. And then I have my lining for the clear pocket. So you can see the clear pocket's gonna go over the lining like that. Now, my lining is quill cotton with woven interfacing and then these shorter cuts of fusible fleece on the back. You can see that I have quite a bit overhanging down here on the bottom. I did cut these about 1/2 inch longer than the pattern suggests. So it's about 1/2 inch taller than what the pattern suggests. And that's just because when I was making the first one, I found these ended up a little short, and I kind of had to finagle things to accommodate that. This is something that can be longer than it needs to be, and we can trim it down later. So that's what I did today. I made it 1/2 inch longer than it suggested. And then when we construct the bag, if this is too long, I can trim it down, no problem. And then you have 2 cuts of material for your lining. I'm using waterproof canvas, and this is more of a lightweight waterproof canvas. It's from Wonderground Fabrics. And this is nice because I just don't have to interface anything. You could also use quill cotton here if you'd like. But if you were making this bag to be used for things like crayons, pencils, things like that that are going to stain the material, waterproof canvas is a good way to go because it's pretty durable. So let's get these zippers prepped. First, let's add our zipper pulls to all of our zipper tape if that's something you need to do. So once you have these zipper pulls installed, you're going to trim down your zippers. Now, the pattern suggests them all be 12 3/4 of an inch long. I'm going to have 2 of them that length, so 2 of them are going to be 12 3/4 of an inch. And then the other one I'm going to make 12 1/2 inches. Now I know it's not that big of a difference, but it is enough. So one of them I'm going to keep at 12 1/2 inches. This is going to be the top zipper, so I'm going to have zipper tabs on it. And then the other two for the clear vinyl pockets, these are going to be 12 3/4 of an inch. All right, so I have these trimmed down. These are my 12 3/4 inch ones, and this is my 12 1/2 inch one. I'm gonna start with just the 12 1/2 inch one. So I'm gonna put the other two to the side. So here are all my zipper tab pieces. You can see I have some skinnier ones, and then I have a chunkier one. This one here is a 2 inch by 4 inch cut, and this is what I'm gonna be using for my top zipper. So let's grab an iron and give this a quick press. And now I'm going to flip it wrong side up, and I'm going to press long sides together, wrong sides together. And this is really helpful if you use quilt cotton. You can use vinyl. I used vinyl on the first one. It's just a little bit more bulky. So then we open it back up, and then we're going to take those long raw edges, and we're going to fold them in to meet that midpoint mark and press down. I'm not using steam with my iron for this. It gets way too burny. Fingers start to get burny when you do that, so I'm just using a dry hot iron today. So now what I'm going to do is I'm going to take one end of my zipper and I'm going to just put it right on the wrong side of my zipper tab, and then I'm just going to fold the zipper tab over that edge. So that midpoint mark goes right up against the edge of the zipper. And then I'm going to grab some clips and clip this in place. Okay, and then I'm going to take the other end of my zipper tape and I'm going to fold it up to go in the rest of that zipper tab. You see what I'm saying? This way we don't have to cut multiple pieces and line them up. It's just a little bit quicker if we can just do it all in one go. All right, so now I'm going to take this to the sewing machine and I'm going to top stitch along this innermost edge, this fold right here closest to the zipper teeth, at 1/8 of an inch seam allowance. Okay, once you have that top stitched on, just make sure you caught it on the back, double check. Oh, you know what? I see I did not catch it on the back of this one. So I'm gonna go run this one more time. Okay, so now I have 2 rows of stitching, not noticeable at all. It's such a small space. I'm not worried about that. So once you have this on there, what you're gonna do is you're gonna take your scissors and you're gonna trim down those zipper tabs so that they're the same width as your zipper tape. So just like that. You see how cute that is? Isn't that a sweet little end to your zipper? I always love the way these look. So do this for both ends. Okay, so now the finished size of this should be about 12 1/2 inches long. And you can set this to the side. This is just the top zipper. Now let's work on those clear pocket zippers. So you can see for the clear pocket zippers, you have about 3 cuts of material. What you want to do for these is to have 2 pieces of material on each zipper end. So what I'm gonna do is I'm just actually gonna kind of eyeball this and just cut these down like this. They don't have to be a very specific size. They just need to be wider than the zipper tape. So for example, we have those 2 there. And now let's cut this one down into 2 pieces. There we go. And then we need 2 for the bottom here. I think I can just cut this one in half. You can see I'm like not worried about this much at all. And then I'll cut this one down a little bit as well. There we go. All right, perfect. So take one of your zipper tabs and lay it right side up, and then take your zipper and lay it right side up over that zipper tab and just center it like that. You can grab a clip and clip these together, and then take another zipper tab and lay it right side down. So we're making like a little sandwich. Our zipper tabs are right sides together and the zipper is in between them. If you're using the same fabric, it really doesn't matter if the zipper is up or down. It'll be right either way. So we're gonna do this for all 4 ends. Just zipper, tab, sandwich, zipper in between them. Make sure the zipper tabs are right sides together and that they are wider than your zipper tape. So now we're going to take these to the sewing machine and sew along each one of these edges at 1/4 inch seam allowance. So once these are sewn on, we're going to flip them back. And if you'd like to press this with an iron, you can. Let's go ahead and do that. I think that'll make it a little bit easier. So I'm just going to take one zipper tab, flip it back, and press. And these zipper teeth are made of plastic, but you can press an iron on them. You would have to hold it down for quite a while to get them to melt, so don't do that. Just press it to get the fabric to lay flat. There you go. So I'm gonna do this for all 4 edges. All right, so the pattern doesn't suggest this. What I'm gonna do is I'm just gonna quickly top stitch along these edges just because I have a tendency to mush things around a lot and I don't want this to get disoriented. So I'm just gonna top stitch right over the zipper tabs, just where the zipper tape is. So now that I have these flat and top stitched and ready to go, what we're gonna do is we're gonna trim along the edge of the zipper tape. So we're not cutting the zipper tape, we're just kind of using that as a guide to trim down these tabs so they're the same width as the zipper tape. It doesn't have to be perfect, okay? It's okay if it's a little wonky. So let's just go right along the edge. So now you have these zippers that are nice and long, and then they have these little extensions over here, and that way we can attach these into the seam without a lot of bulk. All right, so these zippers are ready to go. Go ahead and put them to the side. So now let's work on the keyring strap. Now I do have mine interfaced with woven interfacing because a keyring strap is going to be pulled on, right? It might hold the weight of everything inside the bag. So I like to beef it up a little bit. You could also add a very skinny cut of Decoville Light here to really help it. So to prep this, I'm gonna fold my fabric in half, wrong sides together, short edges together. So not the long edges, short edges together, wrong sides together. And then open it up and then refold those short edges in to meet that middle fold that you just made. So do this for both of the edges. And then you're gonna fold it in half one more time so you have like a little hot dog bun, just like that. Now let's take this to the sewing machine and just top stitch along both of these long folded edges. Once that's top stitched, I'm gonna grab my little ring. So you could use like a keychain, you could use a D-ring, you could use anything. You could use a swivel hook, you could use all kinds of stuff. I'm just using this little heart keychain. I'm just gonna wrap my material around it, just like that. And now I'm just going to top stitch 1/8 of an inch away from the raw edge, just to hold this in place like this. All right, once you're done with this, go ahead and put it to the side. All right, next we need to prep the top for the vinyl pocket. So remember, these are 2 pieces of quilt cotton that do not have any interfacing on them. We're going to lay them wrong side up and fold them wrong sides together, long sides together. We're prepping this just like we prepped the zipper tabs. We're gonna make a little double fold binding here. So this is a nice small cut of fabric. So once you have that folded in half, open it back up and then fold those long edges up to meet that middle fold you just made. And press all the way down the edge. So do this for both sides. And then once you have them both pressed in, fold the whole unit in half and you can give it one last press, making your long hot dog bun. And now that's good to go. Go ahead and repeat that with the other one. So once the binding's good to go, grab your clear vinyl pockets. Now, if you have a directional printed vinyl like I do, just make sure you're adding the binding to the top of that pocket. And what you can do is you can just take your vinyl and slide it in there and wrap your binding around that top edge. And just do your best to make sure it's even, so one side isn't longer than the other. If the front side comes down too far and we top stitch, you're not going to catch the back. If you're kind of worried about not doing that correctly, grab yourself some double-sided tape. And I suggest any sort of double-sided tape that you can easily sew over. So this double-sided tape I'm using today is from Serial Bag Maker, and I do really, really like it. So I'm adding the double-sided tape on just one edge of my fold over on my binding. And I'm not adding it right on the edge of the fold because I don't want it to somehow accidentally be seen in the end. So I'm adding it more towards the raw edge on one side. And then I'll trim that down. And then I'll remove this paper. And now I can just lay my vinyl right side up and line it up with that middle of the binding and over my tape. And what that's going to do is just kind of stick the back down so that I don't have to worry so much about what that's doing. There we go. And now I can just fold the front down. There we go. And use some clips to hold the front in place. And when I'm doing this, I'm trying to make sure from the front I don't see the back peeking through. Now if you do, that is perfectly fine. This is why we have it double folded, so there's no like raw edges that you're gonna see or the back of the fabric. You're not gonna see the back of it, you're just seeing more of the same fabric. So there we go, one piece of vinyl is good to go. Go ahead and repeat that with your other clear vinyl. So now let's take this to the machine and top stitch along the bottom edge that's folded at 1/8 of an inch seam allowance. Only the bottom edge, not the top edge. since that binding isn't interfaced, it can stretch, and if you had it stretch and it overhangs a little bit, just make sure you trim it down. Make sure it's just the same, comes to the same place on the vinyl. If you have a spot like I do over here where the vinyl kind of overextends the edge of the binding, that is okay. We will be sewing this at a 1/4 inch seam allowance, so as long as it's not bigger than that, you should be fine. So now you're gonna grab your longer zipper tapes. Remember, we have one zipper that's shorter. We're not using that yet. These are the zipper tapes for the vinyl pockets. And what you're gonna end up doing is laying the clear pocket with the binding right over your zipper tape. And you wanna get it as centered as possible. You can just look at the zipper tabs and you can eyeball this. To help with this, once again, we're going to be using the double-sided tape. I'll have a link for this down below. I forgot to mention it in the beginning of the video, but I'll have a link for this. And what I like to do is I like to put the tape on the back side of the binding for the clear pocket and just right along the middle. So I don't have it right on the edge on the top or the bottom. I have it just running right along the middle. And then I'll remove the paper, flip this over. So zipper is right side up and pocket is right side up. And then I'm just gonna use my eyeballs to center it. And I want it pretty close to the teeth. Now it doesn't need to be covering the teeth. It doesn't even need to be touching the teeth, but it should be pretty close to it. You don't have to get it right the first time. Kind of figure this out. Work on centering it first. So I'm looking over here and I have about the same amount on each side. And then I can kind of move around my zipper teeth, move my binding up or down. I see I have a bit of a wave here, so I can kind of push that down a little bit. Get it exactly the way you want it. And if you get it too close to the zipper teeth, you're gonna have a hard time opening and closing that zipper. So think about that. You like it close, but not too close. Once you're happy with it, just give it a good finger press down. There we go. So let's repeat that with the other clear pocket and the other zipper. And if you've noticed, each time when the zipper is closed, I have it all the way to the left. So that's how I orient my pockets. If you don't mind, then do whatever you want. But that's how I like to do it. Zipper, when closed, goes to the left on both of these. So now that you have both of these taped on, we're gonna go back to the machine, and using your zipper foot, you're going to top stitch along the top edge of this binding. So that's gonna hold it in place against the zipper. Once you have that top stitched at 1/8 of an inch seam allowance on the binding side, you can do one more row of stitches right along the center of your binding, and that's just going to really secure it. Once you have those stitched in place, let's trim them down. So grab your scissors and whatever overhang you have from your zipper tabs, just use the side of your clear pocket to guide your scissors, or you could use a ruler and a rotary cutter here if you prefer. So now let's add the bottoms to this. So remember, you have 4 bottom pieces, 2 for each pocket. So let's just start with 1. You're going to take one of your bottom pieces and lay it right side up. And then take your clear pocket and lay it right on top of it, lining up the bottom long edges, just like that. You might want to grab some clips and clip this in place. Now we're going to take our second bottom panel and we're going to lay that right side down along the same bottom edge and just include it in those clips, lining it up with the sides and the bottom edge. So once you have one done, do the remaining clear pocket the same way. Now let's sew along the bottom clipped edges of both of these pockets at a 1/4 inch seam allowance. So once these are stitched in place, what we want to do is we want to press this material away from the vinyl, but I mean, you can do that with an iron, but you don't want to actually put the iron on the vinyl. So if you do that with an iron, you're going to need to use a pressing cloth. You could also just kind of push it down with your fingers. So I do one side like that, and then I'll flip it over, and I'll push down the other side the same way. And to help, what I do is I add some clips to this raw edge on the bottom here. All right, and then you just give it a good finger press. And that should be good. So I'm going to do this with the other one as well. Just pressing the 2 bottom panels wrong sides together. All right, there we go. This is looking cute, isn't it? So now we're going to top stitch along the edge closest to the vinyl at 1/8 of an inch seam allowance. Now, before I move on, I'm going to add my bag tag centered on the top piece of my outer panel. So to make sure I have it as centered as possible, I'm going to fold it in half, short edges together, and I'm going to clip a itty bitty tiny triangle. You could also mark this with a pen, whatever's easiest, right on that top edge, just enough for me to see. Then I'm going to grab some double-sided tape and add that to the back of my tag. And then I'm going to use that midpoint mark and I'm going to just line my tag up completely centered. I don't want it too high or too low. You should be able to feel the fusible fleece on the top and the bottom, and if you can, then that means you're in good shape. It shouldn't get eaten up in anything. And now I'm just going to quickly top stitch around all 4 edges of my tag at 1/8 of an inch seam allowance. I don't know if you can see, but I leave all of the tails really long when I do this, and so I go to the back and I pull on those bobbin threads that are nice and long. And then using a stiletto or anything pointy, I'm going to pull the little loops of the front-facing thread to the back. So that way all 4 of my threads are going to be on the back side over here. And then I can just take these 4 threads and triple knot them to hold them in place. And this just gives the tag a nice clean look. You can't really tell where the stitching started, where it ended, because there's no back stitching, so I like that. And once again, my tag is a little crooked, as always. So now grab both of your exterior tops and then the lining panels. And we're going to take one of the lining panels and lay it right side up. You can see I have the really long edge overhanging on the bottom. And then we're going to take one of our vinyl pockets and we're going to match it up with the top and the sides. So you can see I did not need to add that extra 1/2 inch at all today. I must have miscut something the first time. So you don't need to change the pattern. But it's okay, because I can trim this off. That's not a big deal. So I am just clipping along this top edge. So the zipper is right side up and the edge of it is right along the top of the lining, just like that. Remember, this is the lining for the clear pocket, not the lining for the bag. We haven't messed with the lining for the bag yet. Just going to go along the sides as well. I'm not worried about the bottom. Since my lining is so much longer, I will have to trim that off, probably with a rotary cutter. But once I have this clipped in place, now I'm going to grab my top, and so this is going to be the front of my bag because it has my bag tag. Just make sure it's laying in the right orientation, and then I'm going to flip that right side down along the top edge of the zipper tape and just add that to the clips right up there. So I like to add the top corners first and then clip along that long edge. Okay, let's do this for the other clear pocket and lining as well. So we have a lot of stuff clipped here, but we're not worried about the sides or the bottom at all right now. All we're worried about right now is this top edge where the zipper is. So we're going to sew along this edge at a 3/8 inch seam allowance if you can. Otherwise, just get as close as you possibly can to the zipper teeth. A 3/8 inch seam allowance is going to have the same look as the bottom here, so it will look a little bit better if you can get really close. So once you have those stitched in place, go ahead and press that top panel up. Oh yeah, that looks good. It's nice and close to the zipper teeth. It looks about the same placement as the bottom. That looks great. So you can grab an iron if you'd like and press this with an iron. I'm just going to finger press it with my hands. And now what we want to do is we want to fold this up, press it up, top stitch along this top edge on the top panel, and then we're also going to baste down the edges and the bottom. Now, it can be a little tricky going over this clear vinyl. I find when I'm using my zipper foot, it's a little bit easier because I don't have as much foot on it. You could always get a piece of tape and put it on the bottom of your foot, and that will help protect the stickiness. It will make it so that your foot doesn't stick to it so much. But what we want to do is we want to top stitch along the top edge, baste along the sides, and then also baste along the bottom. Now remember, my lining is way too long because, again, I did that on purpose and I didn't need to. But instead of cutting it right now, I'm going to cut it after I baste it. So this is all nice and flat and put together. So I'm going to baste 1/8 of an inch from the bottom outer edge. And then after I do that, I'll just trim down this lining. So I'm gonna do that for both of these. All right, these are cute, aren't they? So now I'm just going to trim down the bottom of my zipper clear lining. There we go. I'm just using the edge of the bottom panel as my guide. So if you have a keychain ring or anything like that you want to add, grab your front panel and on the left side, measure 3/4 of an inch down and then just tuck in that tab right there and clip in place. You want it closer to the zipper rather than the top edge because we are going to be sewing, a zipper up here too. So I'm just going to base this down at 1/8 of an inch seam allowance. Okay, so now we're going to attach the zipper and finish up this bag. So on the top edge of both of your outer panels and your lining panels, mark the midpoint. And then I'm also going to clip the midpoint on my zipper as well. This is just because I'm doing my zipper a little different. If you were doing the zipper according to the pattern, you really don't need to do this because everything will be the same length. Okay, so I'm going to add my zipper in sections because that's just what's easier for me. Make sure this is out of the way as much as possible. This little ring is a cute accessory, but it is something you have to be very careful of when you're attaching everything. So I'm going to take my main front exterior panel and lay it right side up. Then I'm going to take my zipper, and when the zipper is closed, the pull is going to be on the left, and I'm going to lay this right side down, and I'm going to match up the midpoints on the zipper and on the outer panel and clip there first, and then clip out towards the sides. And you'll notice our zipper is shorter than the top edge of our outer panel. It's supposed to be. All right, so now using my zipper foot, I'm going to baste along this top edge at 1/8 of an inch seam allowance. This is just going to hold the zipper in place to make it easier to sew all together later. So now that the zipper is basted on, I'm going to take a lining panel and I'm going to lay that right side, I always mix this up, right side down over the exterior panel. And I'm just going to line it up with this top edge where the zipper is, making a little zipper sandwich, and then clip that together. And I always like to do the top corners first because things like to move around. And then if you have your midpoints marked, clip them at their midpoints. Now I always like to move zippers towards the center before I sew them completely on. It just makes it a little bit easier to get around everything. So now we're going to take this to the machine and sew along this top edge at a 3/8 inch seam allowance. So once that's sewn, you can finger press or iron. I think I am actually going to iron this time. So I'm just going to press along the edge with the lining flipped up first. There we go. And then I'll move the whole thing behind the exterior, and I like to use clips to just line it up at its corners. There we go. Then I can flip it to the right side and kind of finger press here. So now I can press this with an iron as well. Okay, now I'm going to top stitch along this edge, but only where my zipper tape is. So I'm not top stitching all the way to the ends, only from the end of the zipper tape where the zipper tabs are to the other end. You can back stitch at the beginning and end of this if you'd like, or you can leave the tails long and then pull them through and tie them to give it a cleaner look. So I like to pull the threads to the back. It is a little bit of extra work, but I feel like it's worth it. It looks really good. So I'm just pulling the top threads to the lining side. And then I will triple knot each set. And then we trim down these threads close to the knot. And then grab a lighter. If you have like little tiny threads, I just carefully whoop I just carefully burn the threads. I'm not burning the knot. I don't want to accidentally melt the knot off. I just want to burn the little threads to tuck them in. There we go. And that cleans it up really nice. You can't really see on the front or the back where the thread starts and ends and how it all works. It just makes it look cool. All right, so now we just gotta do that with the other one. So I'm going to take my exterior back panel, lay it right side up, and then I'm gonna take my unit with the top zipper and lay that right side down and match up the midpoint on my zipper with the midpoint on the back outer edge. Clip those together. And then just do your best to make sure the sides are matched up as well. It shouldn't be, you know, an inch over to the left or right or anything. And then just add some clips along this top edge. Okay, now I'm gonna baste along this top edge at an 1/8 of an inch seam allowance. Once that's basted, grab your lining panel and lay that right side down on the back of your zipper. And then just match everything up with that top edge. And then let's sew along this edge, anywhere between a 1/4 inch and a 3/8 inch seam allowance. Whatever seam allowance you used for the other side of this zipper, just use the same on this side. So just like before, I'm going to flip up the lining panel. I'm gonna close the zipper all the way too. It makes it a little bit easier to get everything straight. So I'm pulling up the lining panel and I'm going to press along the right side of the lining, right along that zipper. Getting it nice and flat. There we go. I can flip it around. Oh yeah, this is looking so good. So good. Then I can clip these bottom corners. Just add a couple clips to the bottom corners of the back panel that I'm working on here. And then you can run your iron right along the zipper if you'd like. Just make sure you don't, you know, get it on the vinyl or anything. You don't want to melt anything on accident. You know, it's hard to do. There you go. Oh yeah, so cute. So now, once again, I'm just going to top stitch right next to the zipper on the top edge, but I'm going to only top stitch where the zipper tape is. I'm not going all the way to the edges. And again, I will leave my tails long and tie them in the back and clean them up. All right, how stinking cute is this looking? Let's just fold it real quick and take a look. Oh my gosh, it's my new favorite. I love it. So to finish this up, let's first move our top zipper towards the middle. And let's also move our vinyl zippers towards the middle. We don't want anything close to these seams. So we're gonna take the two exterior pieces and pull them right sides together and take the lining pieces and pull those right sides together. So this is what it should look like. Now when lining everything up, let's start at the top where the zipper is. Now I like to open the seam allowance. Now that's why I did not top stitch all the way to the edge. So I'm opening the seam allowance. The quilt cotton is going towards quilt cotton. The waterproof canvas is going towards the waterproof canvas. Line up those seams exactly and then clip. I find that this helps from having that really bulky seam on the top corners. And then what I'm doing is I'm looking at where my zipper is for the clear pockets, and I'm going to try to line that up as well. You know, we have a few different marking places on the sides here, and we want to just line them up as best we can. If they can't line up exactly, that's okay, but we want to do our best. So I'm going to try to line up the bottom seams as well, and clip all the way to the bottom. And then fill in the middle. There we go. So now I'm going to do the same thing on the other side first. And then on the other side we have this little key ring here. So that thing is something we have to really pay attention to and make sure we do not hit that with our needle. So once again, the seam between the lining and the exterior, I'm opening that with my fingers and clipping there. And then matching up where the binding is so that my zippers are matched up. Right here is where my strap is, and that is very bulky. So we're going to want to go over that a couple times. There we go. All right, so that's kind of the hardest part, is just getting those things lined up. Once that's good, then you can go ahead and just add some clips to the bottom edge. Make sure that they line up together. One doesn't overhang the other by a lot, because then when you stitch it, you're going to not catch both sides. So once the exterior is all clipped, go ahead and do that for the lining as well. Obviously you have less to worry about with the lining. It's a little bit easier. So now that everything is clipped together, I went ahead and marked a 9-inch opening on the bottom of the lining. This is how we're going to turn it all out. Make sure your zipper pulls are all in the middle everywhere. And we're gonna sew around the entire area except for that opening in the lining. So in the lining, I'm gonna be sewing at a 3/8 inch seam allowance, but once I get up towards this connection between the lining and the exterior, I will move it to a 1/4 inch seam allowance. I am using a zipper foot because what I wanna do when I'm sewing is get as close as I possibly can to this zipper tab here, but don't sew on the zipper tab. We're not sewing, the needle should not go through that zipper tab. So a zipper foot's gonna help you get close to it without sewing on top of it. And then go around the exterior at a 1/4 inch seam allowance. Same thing over here. Get as close as you can to the zipper tab without sewing on top of it. And then increase to a 3/8 inch seam allowance for the lining. Backstitching really well at the beginning and the end of this opening. And then if you have a little key ring area, you want to go over that a second time. So you don't need to backstitch over it a bunch. You might just want to do one round. And you might want to go around the entire exterior actually one more time, especially if you're using vinyl. So let's get started. Alrighty, now that it's all stitched together, let's clip these corners a little bit. So we're gonna just cut at like a 45-degree angle right on the edge of those corners. And then you're also gonna cut little slits that are parallel to that diagonal. I know I'm using all those terms, but you just wanna cut little slits in there so that the corners can spread out really well. Now it's not the most important thing for the lining. I mean, it definitely does help, but the exterior is where we really wanna do that. Because especially if you're using a vinyl for your exterior fabric, this is going to get bulky. So we're going to trim and just cut little slits into the sides. Making sure you don't actually cut your stitches though, because then you'll have a hole. Now we don't want that. We don't need that. So let's just snip right into there. I know it can be a little confusing because we have a lot of basting stitches in here too, so it's like, what's what? It's fine. If you'd like to trim down a little bit of your material, you can. I'm not going to because it all is pretty stiff. So now I'm going to just open that top zipper all the way and pull the exterior out through that hole in the lining. I've seen a lot of folks give tips if you're having a hard time turning out vinyl to get a hairdryer and just blast it with a hairdryer to warm it up, and then you should be able to turn it out much easier. So if you're in that boat, something to consider. All right, so got most of it turned out. Now I just gotta finesse it a bit, which can be kind of tricky because all that clear vinyl doesn't want to move. Okay, I got one corner poked out, and I can tell you already this corner looks a lot cleaner than the vinyl one. It's hard to get a perfect corner when you've got like the fusible fleece and the bulk. You're gonna have more of a rounded corner naturally, which I think looks great. But when you have a vinyl piece on the bottom here, it's really hard to get that corner clean. It takes quite a bit of work. If you need to, you can always use something like a turning tool. You just want to be careful because you want to push really hard on those corners, but you don't want to rip the seams. And if you use like the skinnier end, this will just rip right through all your fabric, and that's just so sad. So I use the blunter end, and I try not to push so hard. I mean, you want to naturally just really push it in there, but you don't want to break anything. So I am good with the corners being a little rounded. So now for the zipper tabs up here, you'll see we have it all kind of tucked in. What you're gonna do is you're gonna reach your finger in, not through the hole in the lining, just into the lining, underneath your zipper, and just pop it right up. And those give you some nice corners up here. Yeah, that looks nice. Do the same thing on the other side, just kind of reaching in underneath the zipper tape and popping up those tabs. And then I kind of smush out the corner too, so it's not too rounded up there. Oh my word, isn't it adorable? Look how cute this is. Oh, I love it. Okay, so now let's close up the lining. So let's pull the lining out. Make sure you poke out the corners in the lining with the lining out like this. It'll make it easier. And then all you have to do really is just kind of pull along the corners, and the material will kind of naturally fold down on itself a little bit. You can just manually fold it down to help, and then clip. And I don't measure how much I'm folding it in. It's the lining. It's not a big deal. You just want to make sure you fold it in enough so when we top stitch it, you're actually sewing through both sides of the fold so none of those raw edges end up poking out at any point. And I have been having so much fun with these sew-in labels from Lauren Mormino. So I'm going to add one of these. This one just says, may contain cat hair, because I've got cats. So what I do is I just kind of unclip one small section, and then the, edges go into that seam. And I just make sure it's poking out enough so we can see the text in the image, and then reclip. Just make sure you got it on both sides. There we go. So now when I top stitch along this, I'll also top stitch over this tab. And that's just cute. So let's top stitch along this edge at 1/8 of an inch seam allowance to close it all up. Once that's closed up, just push the lining into the pouch and make sure you really poke those corners into the exterior corners. Man, isn't this so cute? Wow, 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 wow. Look at that. Like, who wouldn't love to use this? This is so much fun. Oh, I'm gonna have to take this one on a trip. I tell you what, it is making me very hungry with all these little coffees and all these snacks. Oh, I'm so hungry right now. Oh man, guys, this is such a cute one. Look at this. I love the colors on this. A lot of times when I pull my fabric, I feel the same way you guys do. You guys have mentioned before that you see the fabric I pull and you're like, Jess, I don't know about that. I don't know if that's gonna go together. I feel the same way sometimes. I'm like, well, we got snacks, we got coffees, and it's kind of a lighter color. It might work, and then dang, did it work, right? It looks so, so good. And I love this little key ring on here. This is more of just holding it by your finger. You could definitely attach like a wristlet strap to it. I think that would be adorable. This bag is so much fun. So this would be a great teacher gift. I know as we start getting into Valentine's Day, spring break, end of the school year, things like that, keep this one jotted down on a note as kind of a last minute, this would be a great teacher gift because it's just so, so cute. And you could put everything in it because it's not really small, it's a good size. Oh, you know what? I know this would be so good for a little artist. They could put their white paper on the inside and then their markers and pencils on one side and their chalks and things on the other side. Oh, I love it. I love it so much. So here they are together. You can see one I did in vinyl, one I did in quilt cotton. I actually like the quilt. I like them both, honestly. I like them both a lot. But I really like the quilt cotton one. So don't think that if you're using quilt cotton that you're kind of missing out on anything, that maybe it's not as structured. It's still super structured. So I highly recommend this pattern. This is a fun one, Vivi. This is so cute. So I hope you love making this as much as I do. If you make one of these and you put it out there on the social media world, make sure you tag me. I'm at OklaRoots. I love seeing what you guys are making. You're all so incredibly inspiring. Thank you so much to Sewn Ideas for allowing me to use your patterns in my tutorials. You guys know that Sewn Ideas is a favorite on the channel, so we're always making something from them. I hope you're having a great day. Have a fantastic rest of your week. Get out there and make something. Bye, guys.